Hello everybody and welcome again to Theatrical Tuesday, where as always we have two games for you. Now this week, the two games I've got, one game is definitely tailored for Key Stage 2, the other game is definitely tailored for Key Stage 1. But again, having said that, if you think you're up to the challenges, if you can think of adaptations for either game, then it's entirely up to you and how you think you can play those games and engage with it. As always, the games are going to be best played if you can play with brothers or sisters, and especially parents if they're able to play with you. Okay, first game for Key Stage 2 is called Radio Shuffle. Okay, now this game is played by, firstly, you as a family thinking of all the different programs that you might hear on radio or television. It's called Radio Shuffle, but it also works for television. Okay, so on radio or TV, you might have sports programs, you might have documentaries, you might have action things, you might have news, anything at all. Okay, and the way it works is that with your family, you can write down some of these programs so you can remember them. So someone could be writing down sports, and again in sports you might be listening to football, you might be listening to rugby, you might be listening to basketball, you might be listening to cycling, anything which is of your interest. Okay, one person is the leader as always, and they're going to tell the people in the group what sort of sports commentary, what sort of news, what sort of radio commentary they want to hear. Okay, so if I were to point at somebody, I might say sports commentary, football, and as soon as I point to them and say that, they have to imagine that they are commentating on a football game, and they have to sound like a football commentator. They have to have the excitement of a football commentator. They have to be talking about everything that you might hear and see in a football game. Okay, so if I point and say football commentator, you might suddenly go, and here's Harry Kane now. He's taking up through the left-hand side, and he crosses it in, and Dele Alli, oh, and he's missed it. Okay, that's literally the first thing that has come to my mind. Okay. So sports commentary with a football game like that, as soon as you're pointed, you've got to come up with something on the spot, okay? You have to try to do the voice and everything that you can hear with it. If I point to somebody else and say news, then they might say, welcome to BBC News at 6, and today we have this headline, okay? Entirely up to you with what you come up with. It is a spontaneous, on your feet sort of game, so you're doing improvisation, you're doing character work, you're thinking about the storytelling that you could do before you play this game, because it is for Key Stage 2, because you could like be pointed at and you might be like, I don't know what to say. Have a think, break down all these programs that you could hear, bullet point them about, like the way we talked about the different sports, what they're going to say. If there's news, perhaps you can come up with some fake headlines for some news, and then suddenly the task that you've got isn't so big. And then you'll be able to improvise that a little bit more. Okay, so you can take those bits that I've given you and build on those in any way that you want to. And I would suggest really before you play the game, putting those bits down so you can like help each other out. You can play the game in lots of different ways. The person leading can just point to people and say, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing this story, or you can build on it. So perhaps if you're doing the sports commentary with football to begin with, one person tells you that what happens to begin with, and the next person has to add to that story, and the next person has to add to it. So instead of just doing loads of different things, you're building that story all the way around. Okay, it's a challenge, it's difficult, it's fun. It will take a little bit of planning perhaps, but if you do all those steps and if you engage with it and if you try different news or different radio shuffles every day, then there's a whole host of things that you could do. And again, the more you play it, the easier it is going to get. Okay, so that's your Key Stage 2 game. For Key Stage 1, we're going to play a game called Build the Image. Again, as an entire family, you can play this game, and it starts with one person going into the center of the room, and they start with a particular frozen image. So I could start in the room, I could go in there, and I could just freeze, and I'm waving to somebody, and that's all I'm giving you. I'm just waving to somebody, okay? It could be that the next person who goes in that is waving back, okay? Perhaps they're two friends who haven't seen each other for a long time. The whole point of the game is that every person who goes into that image, you build the story of what's happening. And the more people who go in, the more variance you have, the more different characters you have, the different storylines you start to build. If one person is waving, then instead of perhaps waving back, you change that by somebody being upset. If that's what happens, then how does that change the story, and how does that change the next person who's going to go in? Okay, so again, every time that you have a new character in there, perhaps you could have a pause to talk about what's happening. Perhaps you could have a talk to discuss what you could do, or discuss what happens next, or what you think is going to go on. And then as you build that image more and more and more, you get a more refined detail idea of it. Okay, it especially works if you do those questioning bits with it. Okay, so it's not just going in there and not knowing what you've got to do. If you're going in there, why are you going in there, and how does that help the image? Okay, so you're really, really thinking about your skills of what you're noticing and why things are happening. Okay, so you've got the two games there. Key Stage 2, which is a tough game, but believe me, it's really, really good. It's a lot of fun if you're able to have patience with it and do those introductory steps. The Key Stage 1 game of completing that image. Once you've completed that image, you could take that further. Can you then build a small scene to go with it after you've done it? Lots of things for you to do there in both of those games. Again, stay safe. It's nearly the end of term. Have fun with your games, and I hope that you're being able to do the drama home learning as well. Okay, have fun, stay safe. See you soon.